I'm an architect who's very concerned about cities and their future, and I think sustainability has never been more important in the world than when talking about cities today. In 2007, 2008, half the world's population is living in cities. It's going to grow, and therefore if we can do something about the sustainability of cities, we can actually do something about the sustainability of the planet. What I mean about this is that if we can make cities more compact, less sprawling, use up less energy, be less dependent on conventional car use, not have many kilometers to stretch infrastructure like electricity or sewers, let alone transport itself, you can have, in the great tradition of, in fact, European cities like Zaragoza, like Rome, where I was brought up, and others, a very efficient city. So for me, sustainability means making cities more compact and therefore more sustainable over the next 20 or 30 years, but starting now. There are two groups of people who can do a lot about this, and first it's politicians, and to a degree obviously citizens. Politicians are the only ones, particularly leaders of cities and mayors in particular, who can make very strong decisions today that will affect literally the future of generations to come. Decisions can be made by mayors, as they have in Portland, Oregon in the United States, in London, the city where I work and live, to stop growth on the edges of the city, to actually have a green belt and to stop sprawl, which keeps on going forever. This is a very bold decision, but absolutely the right decision when it comes to cities which are growing and which have, and that is particularly the case in the West or in the Northern Hemisphere, large amounts of available land, and usually ex-industrial land. So what we call in England brownfield sites, old factories, old areas with railway stations, etc., which are no longer in use. By concentrating development on these areas where there already is often good infrastructure in terms of transport, where there are existing communities surrounding, where there are schools and other facilities like health centers and all that, then you can create a sustainable city. And for me, sustainability therefore not only means energy, and it also means society. Sustainability needs to be understood at the level of environmental equity over the next years and the way it affects climate change, but also in terms of making cities more just for the people who live there. Therefore, in terms of what citizens can do to make environments more sustainable, there is a critical role for them to play, which is to make sure that they make clear to their politicians and act on the ground in terms of making it clear what it is that constitutes civilized, socially inclusive living. What I mean by this is that there are cities in the world, like Johannesburg, like Mexico City, to a degree São Paulo today in Brazil, which are becoming more and more diverse as they grow. There are areas which are ghettos. There are ghettos for rich and poor. There are ghettos for black and white. There are ghettos for people who come from different religious backgrounds. This to me is the anti-city, and it's therefore a non-sustainable city. And I think citizens need to be very clear about the fact that if they come to live in cities, one of the reasons they do that is in order to have a democratic environment where people share the public spaces of the city, and as my colleague Richard Sennett says, not to be fearful if people who are different from you. And I think that has a lot to do with bottom up as much as it has to do with top down. Sustainability can and must be communicated through the broadest media. It mustn't be seen as a word which is only of interest to a group of techie nerds, people who go to conferences, people who organize major exhibitions like I do and like people who are in Zaragoza are experiencing. It has to be a term which is used by every single major public leader. It must be taken out of the box of the different engineering and architectural or planning policy making groups, and it really has to sort of literally cut across, which it does, the debate about the future of society. So I stress, in order for it to be communicated, sustainability must be talked about, yes, at the climate change, environmental level, but also at the social level. We need to have cities which are sustainable for children, not just for older people. We need to have cities which are sustainable for individuals who are weak and frail, and not just those who are rich and strong. In London, one of the negative sides we're experiencing is that when people have children, and they tend to be middle class, the first thing to do is actually leave the city and go out and live in villages outside, because the schools are better. So, for example, to make a city more sustainable, getting a public school, by which I mean a state school, available to everyone at the heart of the community is essential. This is the stuff that should be the basis of television programs, newspaper debates, and on the political agenda of every major new mayor in Europe and elsewhere. I think I've made my message clear. More and more people living in cities. We need to therefore make cities more environmentally and more socially sustainable for them to work. If we allow cities like Mumbai in India, cities like Lagos in Africa, to continue having the large percentage of poor people living in conditions of total squalor, we will just create a time bomb in terms of a social explosion in the few years. We're already experiencing riots in parts of the world today because of the increased food prices. These are the issues that need to be addressed. So the message is that cities are here to stay. We can either make them better or we can make them worse, but we certainly have to make them sustainable.